apple orchard down in the lower left-hand corner, and 3 jet planes streaking across the sky with the words, "Years ahead." Years ahead. And he was years ahead. While working in Napa Avenue, he got his pilot's license. He always wanted to fly. And in fact, he soloed on Thanksgiving Day. And after he soloed and he passed, the instructor says, all right, well, you're done as far as this goes. You want to go for a ride? I'll show you some tricks. The father said, sure. Well, he took him up and he did barrel rolls and loops and all this kind of stuff. My father said he lost his Thanksgiving dinner over the side. He joined the Civil Air Patrol and the Ground Observer Corps. They had a little booth up at Davidge Park, and members of the Lions Club and different people would take shifts and go up there. There was this great big book with all pictures of airplanes, and there was a radio in there, and if we saw any planes go by over, my brother and I are only this big, but we loved going up there with my father, and to try and identify any of the planes. That was kind of funny. He did buy an airplane. I saw pictures of it. It was called a Stinson, similar to a Piper Cub. It was red, and he had a partner, Myron Alting, and then he wanted to concentrate more on the business, so he let his share go. He was a wizard at financing. He was turned down by a local bank for a loan who thought he was crazy. You're out there in this cow pasture, you ain't going anywhere, and they denied him a loan. Well, he got hooked up with the National Bank of Orange and Ulster. They were in Goshen, and he did business with them for many, many years. He sold stock, and he sold bonds. You could buy, any customer come in, you could buy a debenture bond for $5.88 and own a piece of Lloyd's, and he sold tons of them. Once he was successful, the other bank approached him with an offer for a loan. Instead of telling him to go to hell, he was happy to take the money. And he did business with him for years. He was in bankruptcy twice. And the first time he was in bankruptcy, things were so tight that they were cleaning out the cash registers and taking it to the bank immediately because payroll was coming up and they wanted to cover all the checks. Well, when they made that deposit, the bank says, Ed, we don't think you're making it. We're taking our money now. And checks bounced all over Middletown. With competition from larger chain stores, Lloyd's became a small fish in a big pot. In 1961, he opened Lloyd's Newburgh. He bought out Modusky's in Warwick and made that a Lloyd's. He opened several gas stations, convenience stores in Port Jervis, Monticello, East Greenbush, Goshen, New Paltz, and 2 car washes and a laundromat. He tried a store on Market Street in Kingston, but it turned out not to be good. Lloyd's had a friendly family feeling. Many people in the area were employed by Lloyd's. And the neat part was, a young couple would meet, they would get married, their kids would come back and work at Lloyd's. We had 3 generations. That was really cool. Always a promoter, in 1958, he bought the first Edsel in Middletown. Ford always had a way of advertising. He'd get everybody's mouth watering, and everybody was waiting to see what the Edsel was. So my father ordered it ahead of time. He bought the first one in Middletown and gave it away as a door prize. I remember Eddie Conover taking out the great big plate glass windows and building ramps, and he drove the car up in and into the store and gave it away. Some lady wanted it. He came up with an idea called Save You Money. This is paper script. It's money. They came in denominations from 1 to 10, I think. For every dollar you spent at the cash register, you received the same equal amount of money in Save You Money. Lloyd Save You Money. In the summertime, usually on Tuesday nights, he would hold an auction, and that was held at the loading dock in the produce department. My father was the auctioneer. He loved it. So with the Save You Money, they would put up all different things, toasters, cookware, household items that could be bought for the Save You Money. And also Tuesday night's a slow night, so everybody came down for the auction on Tuesday nights and did a bunch of shopping while they were there, and then went to the auction and spent their Save You Money. When business started growing in the area, the A&P built a new store directly across the road. Coincidentally, it was election day. He offered a chicken dinner for 19 cents. Half a chicken, potato, corn on the cob. His men built a barbecue pit 20 foot long, and they cooked hard and fast all day. People were lining up with shopping carts and getting 10 dinners at a time. The A&P was very quiet that day. In 1967, the Middletown store burned to the ground. I had a great job at the Ford plant in Mahwah. I was working 12-hour shifts, and I had just got to bed around 8 o'clock, and Jean's mother called me and says, I just went by the store and there's smoke coming out of one corner of the roof. So I threw my clothes on and got down there as fast as I could. It broke through the roof, and the store was basically kind of like a cross. And once the front windows blew out, the fire just went right on down through the whole main store and into the wings, and it was horrible. My father was, he kept walking back and forth around the building, and I was, walking with him, and you could hear the paint cans going off and all the ammunition in the sporting goods department. Sporting goods department, he had a heck of a good sporting goods department with a marvelous selection of shotguns and rifles. And after the fire, they were all in a pile. The shelves had all melted, and they were in a pile. That broke my heart. He wasn't totally covered by insurance. He was short by $285,000. That's a pretty good amount of money in '67. Well, he had such a good reputation in business that all the vendors that he used to buy things from said, we'll work with you, Ed. And they did. And the store was rebuilt. The only thing that didn't burn was what we call the L shape. It was a separate building because it was an alley between the main store and the L shape. That's where the veterinarian was, the dark coin and stamp, the paint department, barber shop. So even though the store is laying in ashes, he set up a minor grocery store in there to keep customer happy as possible, and he made himself an office in there and continued to do business. In the late 1960s, he bought a 147-acre dairy farm on the Sarah Wells Trail. Since I had experience with dozers and backhoes and trucks, he talked me into leaving Ford. We divided it into 49 2 to 5 acre lots. He had a marvelous idea. People who wanted a pony or chickens or something, they could have 2 to 5 acres at we called them little mini farmettes. We bought a brand new Caterpillar D7F bulldozer with a ripper because we had a lot of road to build. And I'll never forget, paid $63,000 for it, including the tax. That machine today is probably $250,000. This is where Russ Tice came into the picture. A skilled equipment operator. We built the roads and created several ponds, and I also learned dynamiting. We had a lot of what they call cuts and fills. You had a high spot, and then you had a low spot. So we would take the D7 and scrape off what's called the overburden, and then there was this beautiful bluestone. Well, I had never done dynamiting before, and it was time to learn. So I went to Goshen, county seat, showed my driver's license, and I got a little flimsy paper license for 50 cents. It was good for 60 days. I rented a compressor and a drill and some hose, and there was an outfit in Warwick called Nielsen. They were blasters, but they also sold dynamite. So I went and bought a case of dynamite. Back then it was 19 cents a stick. When I retired just a couple years ago, it's over $3 a stick. And anyway, I drilled a series of holes. My first batch of holes, I didn't have enough medicine in them, and it didn't really do an awful lot. My next series of holes had a little bit too much in them. They were overloaded. I threw some rock around, but I'm in the middle of 147 acres. So that's where I learned dynamiting, and then later went on to do that as my main profession. In 1974, the bottom fell out of the real estate market. Lots were not selling. We even built a house on spec. But with $250,000 borrowed dollars, we put Arbor Valley on hold. That's when I became an independent contractor. Russ was with me for many years. In fact, when I decided a change, I wanted to get more into trucking, and I sold my backhoe and my trailer to Russ, and he went on to become a successful excavating contractor. This property is right next to the restaurant, the Bull's Head Inn. Well, that was on the property, and we were going to tear that down because it was on a building lot. And these two enterprising chefs came by and said, we want to buy it. Well, we were strapped for cash anyway, so we sold it to them, and they opened up the Bull's Head Inn. In high school, I was a terrible student. I didn't want to read a book for a book report when I could be out in the garage working on my 1940 Ford. I graduated, but by the skin of my teeth. I worked at the store every day after school and every summer. The first full-time job, when all of a sudden here I'm out of school and I realize I don't have a job. So my father says, go talk to the employment director. Well, the only thing they had open was a laborer on the Newburgh store, which was under construction. So I took it. It's up my alley anyway. And I became the welder. And I welded all the rebar that goes inside the concrete forms, and I made repairs on the backhoe, welding teeth, and all that kind of stuff. And that was a good thing. Before the store opened, I became personnel manager. And along with my father, Ed Downey, and Harry Long, we hired all the new employees. When it opened, I was assistant manager. I didn't like it at all. I was not a white shirt type guy. The new Lloyd's in Newburgh was ultra modern, state of the art. The first major business to use heat pumps for air conditioning and for heat and air conditioning. Engineers from across the country came to view the new facility. It was really as modern as you could get. My father realized he could not run everything by himself. He hired managers and buyers in key positions. Unfortunately, his trust and judgment was misplaced. And he put trust in these people, and they made wrong decisions, and that was kind of the start of a downhill motion for Lloyd's. Before this, he loved to travel and explore. He liked Mexico, Guatemala, the Yucatan, and was impressed with Japan for its cleanliness. He told me a story in Japan where a guy with a dump truck backs over this curb trying to get gravel on the other side of the sidewalk. And when the wheel went over the curb, it tipped and some of the gravel fell out on the ground. And the guy dumps the load, pulls back out on the street, and gets out a shovel and a broom and cleans it up before he left. He said, you don't see that here. He didn't drink or smoke. He ate healthy, he exercised regularly, especially on his bicycle. And he'd go down to the bottom of the hill. He lived on Overhill Road, and he had trouble getting back up the hill. So I bought him a French-made moped called a Solex. You could pedal like a bicycle, but it had a motor on the front wheel. And when you wanted that assist, you cocked this lever down, and it had a roller that went on the front tire, and then it was motorized. He thought that was great. He liked it. What he said, I want to graduate. I want something to, I want a scooter. He had always had prostate problems, so he said he liked the idea of a, I told him the scooter's like sitting on a kitchen chair. He said, well, that's what I want. So I found him this Lambretta, and it was green. He wanted it white, so I painted it white. And I totally restored it, and boy, he thought that was terrific. I said, okay, now you got to wear a helmet. That's not a problem. But you got to have a motorcycle license. And he says, I've been riding a motorcycle most of my life. I got to take a test now to show I can do it. I said, yeah, okay. So I made the appointment, and I took him for his road test. And I was in the car behind him with the tester. And I remember going down Lake Avenue, and Walt Ramos, a business associate and friend of his in a pickup truck, was coming the other way. And they made eye contact. My father's got this charcoal suit on with a red tie blown over his shoulder. And as I passed Walt around us, he's going. He couldn't believe it. Well, he loved the Lambretta. He passed the test, no problem. I was working up at his house one day, helping him out with something, and I was driving a 750 Norton Commander S. And I had it up there, so he said, he's got to run down to the store or something. Do you mind if I take your motorcycle? Well, as compared to this Lambretta, this is a handful. So I checked him out on it, showed him all how to run it, and he ran it down into the woods. And I was sure he was okay with it, so he took off. So he's going about an hour and a half. I'm starting to get just a shade worried, okay? But here he comes down the road, pulls in a driveway, he says, boy, that's a hell of a machine, he said, but it's a lot more than I need. But I want to go bigger. So I found a nice 350 Honda, and I restored that, and he rode that all over the place. First day he had it on the road, he said he got stuck in a parade in Greenwood Lake. He was a farm boy. He always had a big garden, 90% of which he gave away. And his specialty was sweet corn. He really loved sweet corn. And of course, with sweet corn, you want to cook it as soon as after it's picked, because the starches, the sugar all turns to starch. He would literally get a pan of water going and go down and pick his corn and bring it in and throw it in the pan. He loved trees, hence the name Arbor Valley. When we built Arbor Valley, we planted 2,000, they're just empty meadows now. We planted over 2,000 trees, from sycamores to you name it, all through the fields. He had that foresight. They didn't look like anything then, but as years went by, now you had all these beautiful trees on the property. Hence the name Arbor Valley. I remember him driving to Vermont and going in the woods and digging out a certain white birch tree that they had up there that was extinct down here. And on his gravestone is an oak tree with the branches going over the motor. He was a Republican. He used to spend his own money on bumper stickers and campaigning and so on. But when it came to elections, he wasn't afraid to cross party lines. He would vote his mind. Remember the little plastic containers that your 35mm film used to come in? He had the camera department save all of them. He had thousands of them. And he had his secretary type up his name, address, and phone number. And of course, she would type it like 50 times on one sheet of paper and then cut them all into little individual pieces. And he would put those into film canisters. And he'd throw some in the Wallkill River, some of them in the Shawangkill, with a little note, if you find this, please get a hold of it. That was fun. He made, I have a couple home yet. a little plastic disc. It's like between a nickel and a quarter that says, "No tip, poor service." And he would give them to his friends, and everybody kind of got a kick out of that. And then he told the manager of his own restaurants, "I don't ever want to see one of those turn up here." My mother died in 1964. She had always wanted grandchildren, but she died when Jean was pregnant with our first daughter, Chris. He married a woman with 4 kids, and he treated them as his own. He adopted them, college educations, and he really did wonders for those kids. But he and his wife wanted one of their own. They said, I made mistakes with mine, you made mistakes with yours, let's have another one. So he had a son when he was 60, Joey. I used to take Joey around, and when he was a little kid, and somebody'd say, "Boy, is that your son?" I said, "No, it's my brother." used to blow him away. The marriage lasted 16 tempered years. An organization called SMI, Supermarket Institute. He belonged to that. Now, these were the owners of such as Stop and Shop, Kroger, Piggly Wiggly, Wawa. These were the big hitters. They all belonged to this one organization. And once a year, they would have a 3-day convention. And this one I'm talking about now was in Atlantic City. And my brother Jim and I were fortunate enough to go. Now, they would have seminars and teach people different things. And my father loved it. One day, one of his competitors said, "You know, Ed, why are you teaching everybody else all the good stuff you already learned the hard way? Why are you sharing this?" And his answer was just so wise. Competition is good for business. He could view the whole picture. Every year, Philip Morris Company would give away a car. And this year, they were giving away Chryslers. They had a big black 4-door sedan, a fire engine red convertible, and a baby blue coupe, 2-door hardtop. And all the participants at the show got 1 ticket for it. So my father had to go to the bathroom. He gives my mother the ticket. Well, he's gone a little longer than he expected to be. They draw the ticket. My mother looks. She's got the ticket. Well, my father was 6 foot. My mother was 5 foot. So she even tried standing on a chair, trying to get somebody's attention. Hey, I got the ticket. So finally, he came over, and he had just bought a 1958 Ford Thunderbird. That was the first of the 4-seaters. That's after the small bird, we call it. So he told him, I just bought a new car. I kind of rather have the money. So they said, okay, that will be $5,500. But they said, listen, you got a Chrysler dealer in Middletown? He said, yes. Drive the car home. Take it to the dealer. If you don't like it, we'll send you the check for the $5,500. By the time he got home, he was in love. He kept the Chrysler. Always down on the sales floor, getting input from the customers and making sure things were being done right. One day, my father and I are walking down the aisle, and I see this woman coming toward us. And I happen to know she was a very large stockholder. And there was times that my father had trouble remembering names. So before we got up to her, I said to my father, "Mrs. Greenberg." So we 3 of us come up together and said, "Mrs. Greenberg, how are you today?" Oh, she thought it was so great. She knew his name and so on. We walk a little further, and he says, "Thanks, Tom." I've rewritten this thing so many times, I got a couple little addition things here, so I got to make sure I get it right.
Just for your information, a moment of silence. There's a talk going on, and I believe it's an alarm from the power outage. We heard a new chimes they just installed last week, so I think everything's okay.
Here's a little story that is not really connected with Lloyd's, but I know Russ will get a kick out of this. Don't forget, before the Quickway, Old 17 used to go through Middletown, and the traffic jam on a Friday and a Sunday was just unbelievable. It was just bumper to bumper, and then finally in the mid-50s, that's when they started to build the Quickway. Well, me and a bunch of my hot rodder friends one night went out and we moved the wooden barricades and got out on the new Quickway. It was concrete, it was perfect, you could really get good traction. We had about half a dozen cars. So we made a couple of runs and here comes a cop. Well, he's driving, it's a trooper, he's driving a 55 Ford. They only had 272 cubic inches. They couldn't catch us. And one of the guys there, we clocked it off pretty well for a quarter mile, but we left it so when we left, we go out the same way we came in. So that was the end of the quarter mile. Well, one of the guys had laid down a flashlight so we could see that when we get up there. So this guy, he had the fastest car in Middletown. The cops are chasing us. We're all headed toward us out. This guy stops and picks up his 59-cent Rayovac. And we still beat all the cops. It was like a game that they used to chase us, and we kind of enjoyed it. In the mid-90s, the company was in trouble. He hired a troubleshooter who specialized in rescuing businesses. Another bad choice by Ed. Under the guise of helping, this unethical individual attempted to steal ownership from my father. And that was kind of the end of merchandising history for Lloyd's. By the way, the man was convicted and spent time in prison.
What year was that done?
Ed Lloyd started what has been referred to as the Miracle Mile in the town of Walk Hill. He used to love to come up to the house and visit Gene and I. He was pretty much alone. And he always called it the farm. He'd say, I'm coming up to the farm. Sometimes he'd bring a pizza. And we had many good conversations. And two of them that I recall. We were talking about age one time. And he was in his 80s. And he says, you know, I'd kind of like to live to be 100. And Gene and I looked at each other and said, I'll bet he will. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. Another good conversation while here again sitting at the kitchen table. He knew that you know, he was in big trouble, and he said, I was a good merchandiser, but I was a poor manager. That's how he read that. Jean's birthday is in December, and he wanted to take her out to dinner. Now, one of his favorite places was a little buffet type thing in the Caldor Mall. He liked that. So, Gene and I, pardon me, we picked him up at the house, and we're going through the parking lot, and the store's closed. There's litter in the parking lot. I could tell his heart was breaking. And behind the store, there were mattresses and refrigerators, and I knew it was really sad. You could go from the store parking lot up into the Caldor lot. So I stopped halfway across the parking lot. He had this big sign, this marquee in the middle of it. And I stopped the car and I said, Dad, you know what you ought to do? We still had to have maintenance people in the building because of fire protection and heat, so the building wouldn't freeze. I said, you ought to tell the maintenance guys to put a message on there. Thank you for 64 great years, and sign it Ed Lloyd. He says, Tom, that's fantastic. Well, he had the stroke, and I didn't have the authorization, but I had the balls, and I told these maintenance people to put that message up on the sign. Everybody in Middletown thought it was terrific. Well, he never saw it, because he had the stroke. But he did it. On his gravestone, Edmund S. Lloyd. The S is for Sherman. February 12th, 1912, December 27th, 1996. Christmas will never quite be the same. And then the message on the stone is, my brother Jim came up with this. Throughout his journey, he honored and believed in the simple, heartfelt goodness toward life and all people. And it's so very, very true.